The 1776 Unites Initiative, which started as kind of the Black business and social science community, or at least part of its response to the 1619 Project, and since expanded well beyond that. I mean, if you go to 1776unites.com, I won't do our full pitch, but I mean, you'll see educational curricula, you know, some policy positions, the scholars and activists that we have available, like our takes on race relations. But we decided to write a book. There's obviously a market for kind of racial discussion stories right now. I mean, Ibram Kendi's been #1 in the country at various times recently. You know, Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility is up there. And we're coming from more kind of a center-right, you know, working world perspective. And we've gotten, I mean, a fair amount of donations, a fair amount of subscribers at 1776, about on par with 1619, I would guess, in a lot of regions. So we pitched out the book, and the book sold. And the book is a collection of essays about different topics, from John McWhorter's in the book, Carol Swain's in the book. I am myself, obviously, Bob Woodson, the kind of emeritus for 1776. But I mean, Coleman Hughes. And we talk about different things. I mean, what was America's history uniquely horrible compared to really any other countries? You know, with slavery the defining feature of American life? What should, and broad stuff. I mean, what should an American immigration policy going forward that would be a good thing for quote unquote legacy white and Black Americans look like? So a range of different issues on kind of race relations, class relations. But the reason I've been talking trash about the book online is that the book debuted #1 in, I'm guessing, the world. I mean, it would be on Amazon's global platform. Let's see where we are right now.
Yeah, you seem to be doing pretty well last time you shared.
Yeah, we're currently number 136 in the world. We're 136 in the category all books. But I mean, like, we're #3 in Black and African American history, #4 in African American demographic studies. We're right up there in terms of like all social science. You know, so the book is something that went surprisingly viral for a lot of people. I mean, the whole #1 in the world. I'm sorry.
When does it come out? When does it come out?
It's out now. If you just go to Amazon, you can order it. And yeah, it's only been out for a couple of days, but I mean, we've got 15 ratings so far. You can buy it new from the publisher for $25. We cover the shipping. A paperback. I didn't know we had a paperback edition, but I mean, apparently we went pretty big on this with Emancipation Books. Paperback is $17 if you get that delivered from Amazon. So yeah, I mean, it's a pretty significant book release. I mean, it's one of the major books in the country right now. The question is, I guess to some extent, how will that be treated? Like in terms of 1619, The Friendly Rival, will you see the same glowing reviews in, you know, the New York Times and The Nation of these sort of Black academics pointing out, you know, the dry facts on some of this stuff? I don't know.
I somehow doubt it. I have a feeling the reception won't be quite as warm, and maybe that diversity maybe not quite as welcome, since it's diversity of thought. But I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. That's for sure. Yeah, and you've seen this a couple of different times with this sort of content. I mean, well, one of the things with 1776, there seem to be more people that are interested in that kind of centrist, you know, not leaning a little right, but not extraordinarily partisan. Like, what are the facts? You know, here's John Sibley Butler with the history essay approach to race relations than they are in kind of leftist guilt, frankly. And that's empirically measurable. I mean, like, if you look, we have an academic curriculum on our website, which focuses on talking, we talk about American history, a lot of which is pretty terrible. I mean, in the Indian Wars and so on, the atrocities on both sides, we talk about that openly. I mean, there's no reason to lie to kids in your society. But we also put that in the context of, look, women couldn't vote until the 1920s. You know, this is what all other societies, Ethiopia, Japan, were doing. And that comes as a striking surprise to a lot of kids. I mean, I've had multiple minority American kids at Kentucky State say things like, these are smart kids at State University, but say things like, well, what other country had slavery? And you kind of have to break it to them peacefully, like all of them. You know, what about our societies in Africa, the great Black countries like Ashanti? Yep. So we provide that second element of, no excuses for this, but nobody had rights until, for the Geneva Conventions were 1954. And then we talk about kind of the path upward that everyone has shared in the USA, not even just focusing on Black people, like women's rights, the Irishmen, the Civil Rights Act for everybody, Jews, African Americans. So, there's been a lot more interest in that, I think, than there has been in the alternative. We've had 11,000 curriculum downloads. And as I understand, those are mostly from school districts. And what I've heard, at least, about the equivalent figure, because this is kind of like Mole in the other camp, I'd love to have them confirm what the number is. But the 1619 project, last I looked, was at around 3,000. So you have that interesting paradigm where there's this mass kind of slobbering attention being paid to this sort of politically correct upper class stuff. And then there's just this sort of boring social science with a bunch of, Black businessmen writing it that is actually getting, 4 or 5 times the number of downloads or accesses. It's just, how do you crack the media sphere? Like, I do a lot of Black media and I do a lot of Fox, but I've never gotten an MSNBC invite or something like that. You kind of wonder, like, will that happen? Are they going to give, Glenn Lowry a chance to go on and argue with, Don Lemon? Like, is that something that's going to occur?
Is it Don Lemon for real?
You're like Juicy Smollett, but they're French agents, I tell you. But but all this stuff, like, is that going to happen? Probably not. And I guess you could say the same thing about Fox in return. Like, is Hannity going to bring on Tim Weiss? But I think that the comparison between, like, the presentation of this is the mainstream, Black or Midwestern or whatever view, and the reality of, oh, this happens to be number one in the country for a week, isn't interesting.